Hey everyone, how's it going? Well, we have come to that time of year yet again. It is time for the second annual Maybe Midrash, which is an event that is hosted by Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Steve Donahue, Felicia from the Little Prairie Library, and Rick McDonnell. I will leave links to their announcement videos for this event. And what the event is about is it's meant to encourage people to read fiction and nonfiction that deals seriously with religion. And to participate, you just have to read one work of fiction and one work of nonfiction that deal seriously to some degree with religion. And, that's admittedly a very broad category. You can probably fit a lot of different kinds of things into the Maybe Midrash mold, and that's kind of what makes it great as an event. But it's an event that I love. I actually think it's neck and neck for my favorite booktube event after Shake-tember, which was formerly called Shake-tube, but it's the September readathon of Shakespeare that I host with Jason and Steve and Rainey from Rainy Day Reads. But I just love this event a lot, and it's only in its second year, which is kind of crazy to think because I feel like somehow it's always been here. But anyway, it's been kind of funny watching so many people talk about Maybe Midrash and focus so much on the fiction side, because I personally don't read nearly as much fiction related to religion as I read nonfiction related to religion, and I suppose that might be because I'm kind of an outsider, just in the sense that I, could count on one hand the number of times I've been to church. I was raised in an irreligious family. I am myself an atheist. And so there is sort of a brick wall that I hit at some point whenever I'm talking to a religious person. I often do actually find when I'm having sort of deep philosophical discussions with people that I sometimes find myself agreeing with religious people more than my fellow atheists. But there is eventually this brick wall that I hit that they don't hit, past which I kind of have to just peep through in a hole and, examine them like a scientist and kind of wonder what they're doing and, figure out what's going on back there. And I feel like nonfiction helps me to do that, but maybe the reason I don't always engage with religion as much in fiction is because I'm behind that brick wall and not, in front of that brick wall. But that's not to say that there aren't works of fiction that I haven't read and loved that deal seriously with religion. There are, the Gilead novels by Marilynne Robinson, for example. There's Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. And I have two works of fiction that deal seriously with religion that I want to read for Maybe Midrash. And I will just say that this is a hard TBR. And what I mean by that is that I want to read all 5 of the books that I'm going to list here, and I will, hold myself accountable for that. So, the first work of fiction that I want to read is one that I'm extremely excited to read. Jason loves it. It's called At Play in the Fields of the Lord by Peter Matthiessen, and this takes place in the Amazon rainforest, and as I understand it, it is about 2 men, one of whom is a missionary who is sent to convert an indigenous nation in the Amazon rainforest to Christianity, and a second man who is sent there to exterminate them, and the conflict that develops through that. And that sounds fascinating to me on a number of levels, because I'm fascinated by missionary work, I'm fascinated by South America, and I really like sort of gritty stories, and it sounds like a gritty story. But this was also adapted into a film directed by Hector Babenco, which Jason also loves, and which I have recently come into possession of a copy of, and so I will also be watching the movie. So I might do a kind of book-to-film kind of chat on my channel. I think that might be kind of cool. What particularly interests me about the film is that it has a soundtrack by Zbigniew Preisner, who is one of my favorite living composers. He did the soundtrack for the Three Colors trilogy by Kieslowski, among others. So anyway, that's the first one, At Play in the Fields of the Lord. The second one is a science fiction novel, and it kind of ticks 2 boxes for me because I'm trying to read more science fiction this year, and it also fulfills my maybe Midrash reading. And this is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And this engages with religion insofar as the main character at one point sort of starts her own faith, essentially. And that's a big aspect of the story, although I know that there are a lot of other levels that the story is working on. It's a lot about sort of racial relations and these sorts of things, but it also has these, it sounds like it has these sort of theological themes about the nature of God, and that should be really, really interesting. And Octavia Butler is just an author who, you know, we all hear about on BookTube, so I am certainly intrigued to read her work. So those are my 2 fiction picks. I have 3 nonfiction books that I want to read. And 2 of them are buddy reads, and I'm really looking forward to that. So the first one is My Bright Abyss, The Meditation of a Modern Believer by Christian Wiman, which I will buddy read with Weston from the channel Weston Hearts Words. And so this is just kind of again, one of those books that's sort of in a nebulous spot where doesn't sound like it's quite a memoir, doesn't sound like it's quite an extended essay or a collection of essays, but it also doesn't sound like it's quite anything else. But it's just a meditation on Christian Wiman's experience as a believer in the modern world in particular. And yeah, it's just about religious faith, and also, as I understand it, there's a lot about sort of poetry and how poetry sort of informs his faith. And I think that should be really cool, just because I love reading interpretations of poetry, and it often helps me to understand certain poems better and makes me appreciate certain poets better. So anyway, and Weston and I are hopefully going to be doing a Zoom chat with one another and recording it and posting it on either one or both of our channels. So look out for that. I think that should be cool. Weston actually is a Quaker, and as I said, I'm an atheist, so that should be a really cool kind of dynamic. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to that, the book and the buddy read. And then the second buddy read is What Are We Doing Here? Essays by Marilynne Robinson, which is just, you know, a collection of her essays covering all the usual topics in an essay collection by Marilynne Robinson, you know, America, religion in America, science, the intersection between science and religion, Calvinism, Calvin himself, and so on and so forth. And I love Marilynne Robinson's nonfiction. I do find myself disagreeing with her, but that's kind of the fun part, I think. So, and that will be a buddy read with Karen Evans, who is also a believer, so that will again be quite interesting. And then the last book that I'm going to read is not a buddy read. This is The Evidence for God, The Case for the Existence of a Spiritual Dimension by Keith Ward, which Neil Griffiths, who once had one of my favorite BookTube channel, but doesn't post anymore, he once recommended this book in a list of books on theology, and so the title is pretty self-explanatory, so you can imagine that I'm going to end up, you know, arguing with the author a fair amount, but I'm really going into the book with an open mind. You know, what I hope Keith Ward doesn't try to do is, I hope he really doesn't try to lay out some kind of a logical proof for God's existence, because to my mind, logical proofs of God's existence just never work. They never hold up to scrutiny. So I really hope that that's not what this book is. I hope it does something a bit more interesting. I hope it talks a bit more about, you know, intuitive experiences, spiritual experiences, you know, our own, you know, arguing through sort of our own subjective experiences of the world. I would be really interested in that kind of an argument. I think that could be pretty thought-provoking, even if he doesn't necessarily convince me. But this book is also a part of a bit of a personal project that I'm going through this year, a mini project. And the project is to read books on subjects that I am highly skeptical of. And the 3 topics are God, in this case, because I don't believe in God. The second one is psychics, because I don't believe that psychics are legitimate at all. But I bought a book by a psychic, and I will read that. And then the other one is ghosts, and I'm going to be reading a book about ghosts. And actually, that one's also going to be a buddy read with Sharon Goforth. So this is the first in that little project of mine, and so I'm really excited about it. I think it should be interesting. Yeah, anyway, so I'm really looking forward to maybe Midrash. Let me know what you all are reading, and yeah, I hope to see you all around in maybe Midrash. Anyway, I will end there. Bye, guys.